Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. No matter what, when it comes to having a great life, one that's fulfilling, being healthy doesn't just start with your physical body. It starts with what's up at top, and that's your brain. And there is somebody that can help you take your brain from its current performance to peak performance, no matter how old you are. But you know what? We're actually going to talk about the aging brain today. What happens, the changes that take place over the years. And she's a coach and also founder of the Brain Performance Center, which is a behavioral health center dedicated to improving all aspects of brain health and taking you to the next level. Leigh Richardson is with us. Hi, Leigh. How you doing today?
Hey, Steve. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right, so now we have to get honest. Yes, our brain gets older like the rest of us, and sometimes you may notice those changes. Maybe they're not so obvious, but right out of the gate here, can you tell us some of those things those changes, those things that take place as we age when it comes to our brain?
Well, it's interesting, Steve, because the brain's not fully developed until mid-20s. And by the time that brain is fully developed, it's kind of got it's hardwired. And we've got our neural pathways down. We know what we're going to do. And the brain likes it, knows what it wants to do. It likes that familiar feeling. As we're growing up, our brain is we're experiencing new things all the time, and our brain is shaping, and it's forming our positive, our negative behaviors. But once we get to be around mid-25, our brains have learned the way that they want to do things and the way that behavior. They've learned that behavior. So, the brain's great. The 30s, you kind of start to plateau. The 40s, you may start to see some changes, just mild changes in how you process information, how you react emotionally. I can't tell you how many people have told me, I think my fuse is getting shorter every day. Emotionally, it just doesn't seem to take much for me to light up. And I think our fuse does get shorter as we age. Then you start having cognitive impairment, and that's frustrating. You're in the middle of trying to really do a good presentation for your team, and you have a brain fart, and you lose it. You lose your train of thought, and that makes you feel like, the name of my book, Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On. Well, when you lose your train of thought, brain's not on and game's not on. And that's not the way we want to feel, particularly if your team is 10 years younger than you are. You want to feel like you're just as on it as everybody else. And in the 50s, it goes from cognitive impairment to cognitive decline. And then by the time you get to be the 60s, you can have more, memory, more definite, obvious changes in the way your brain performs. But the good news is you can teach your brain to create change. And, you've heard that saying, change is good. Change is good for your brain. It really and truly is. But the older we get, the more set we get in our ways, and we don't necessarily want to change.
Well, it goes without saying, so many of us are afraid of change. It is the fear of making that change. But many times, if you challenge your brain a little bit, it's rewarding. It feels good. Wow, I didn't know I could think like that. I haven't thought like that in years, because we're all creatures of habit, right? And then we just kind of just do every day like we've done the day before. But when you make a little bit of a change, it can be so impactful. When it comes to our brain and the aging of our brain, if somebody spent time with younger people, does that keep us younger? Let's say you're older and you have younger kids. Does that keep us younger, at least mentally?
Well, I think anytime you're learning new things, it keeps us younger. And a lot of times if you're spending time with younger people, you are learning new things. I'm fascinated to watch a 5-year-old take an iPhone And the things what that 5-year-old can do with that iPhone, I'm in awe. I'm like, can you show me how to do that? You know? So anytime that you're learning new things, you're creating change in the brain. And that, keeping our brain plastic and flexible is what's important. And neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change itself. And it does that by creating new neural pathways. And those that we're not using, I mean, the brain's got a philosophy, use it or lose it. If you're not using it, they'll shut those neural pathways down. And what we need is to keep with adult learning. It will keep that brain open-minded. Well, our intuition. We won't let our biases rule our decision-making process, which I have found to be personally, I have found that to be a bigger issue the older I get. And, you can call it experience if you want, but it's also a bias.
Also, you said bias?
Mm-hmm.
Explain.
Well, it's our past experience, our life experiences tell us what's good and what's bad, right? And every time that we've tried to learn a new language, it's been a disaster. Our brain is going to tell us, no, don't do that. It's not going to work. You can't do that. So you get that bias. And then you start looking for things that reaffirm that. You hear about a friend that tried to learn a new language and couldn't do it at all. Oh, see, there you go. That's confirmation that my bias is correct. And I would love to say that I'm bias-free, and it's actually a goal, but it's very difficult. I mean, certainly I have areas that I'm very proud of that I don't have a bias in. But personal bias is a harder one to let go of.
How would you define personal bias?
My personal values, and I am a big believer. I have a gay son. I love his husband. I'm a big believer in that community, and that's not a community that necessarily everyone shares my love for. And it's because when we grew up, what we were taught, the way our beliefs were formed around a certain community, and not that community. I mean, we like to say we're completely race-free. I don't believe that. I believe that we still have biases against race.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. We've seen that during the COVID-19. We've seen certain populations be targeted.
Without a doubt, and even shockingly, and I don't mean to turn the car here, but there was some statements made by I don't know if you remember the comic strip Dilbert. It's been around for decades. Big. Its creator, the cartoonist, made some statements on his YouTube show. Almost hard to believe that statements like that could be made in 2023 in terms of race.
But they were.
And they were, and he may no longer be a cartoonist much longer because publishers, newspapers, companies are pulling the comic strip. So yeah, to your point, it's you think that things are okay, but they're really not. And even when I think back to being a kid and the things that my family had said, different generation, way back then, I'm actually kind of surprised, like, whoa, wow, that was such a different time then. But yeah, so I totally get what you're saying in terms of, your bias and your moral and your values, your moral compass, so to speak.
Absolutely. And all of those guide us. That's really what guides our decision making and our problem solving. And I think that there's some common misconceptions about brain health that really people need to address. And you alluded to it in the very beginning. We need to have a better understanding of brain health. Brain health is just as crucial to your longevity and the quality of life that you will experience as you age as your physical health is. Mm. And one of my favorite comparisons is the skin. The skin is the largest organ that we have. If you compare the amount of time that people spend on taking care of their skin to what they spend on taking care of their brain, there's a substantial difference. I mean, I've got my morning routine, I've got my nighttime routine, because our skin mirrors our age. So, we want to take care of that. But so does our brain function. It really and truly does. And if we don't pay attention to that brain, and if we don't create change in that brain, then we're going to have less memory. We're going to have a harder time recalling names, remembering where we put the keys. Those little things in our daily life at first are no big deal, but as they become more prevalent, they become a bigger pain.
Interesting that you're bringing that up, because you're right. It is so true. We spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on our skin and the way it looks, because we want to age gracefully, but we forget about our brain. And that's aging at the same time. We just can't see it. That's the only difference.
Oh, I mean, it's amazing to me. And I certainly try to take care of my skin. I am not, I have no negative energy around that at all. Mm-hmm. But it's just, to me, such an obvious comparison, because, our brain health, and when I feel really old is when I haven't had any sleep, when I haven't eaten, my brain is in a dysregulated state, and it takes me 20 minutes to do what it normally takes me 7 or 8. That makes me feel really old.
Yeah, I get you. We don't. Yeah. A lot of times we don't want to admit those things, but that is the reality. So when you work with people to help improve their brain health, when it comes to the aging brain, what are some of the things that you can help out with?
Well, what really ties into the aging brain are the lifestyle choices that we've made along the way. And, the aging brain, some people, we all know that alcohol is not good for our brain. But does that stop us from drinking it? Probably not. We all know that sugar is a neurotoxin. Does that stop us from eating it? Probably not. There's a lot of things that we know aren't good for our brain. And I do believe in moderation, that in moderation and in balance, you can certainly experience some of those things. But when you think about the brain, you think about everyday life, and there are things that we can do in our everyday life that will improve our brain health. Part of it, that's sleep. A lot of people tell me they cannot get on a sleep schedule.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you are in the radio world and your radio show starts at 4 a.m., it is rather difficult. But you've got to make your peace with that, and you've got to get your foundations.
Decades, I will tell you right now, Leigh, decades, I got up at 3:54 a.m. And, you find ways to manage that sleep situation, but definitely challenging to the point where I had after, I'm talking decades, I had to move away from that because it took its toll. But yeah, and your brain functions differently when you don't have enough sleep.
Absolutely. I mean, sleep is your foundation, just as is good nutrition. And when you think about, my mom used to always say, and I hated it, you are what you eat. And that just would, irk me to no end. And it's so true. Yeah. It absolutely is so true. And what we know now about food coloring and dyes, and your gut's your second brain. So you got to think what you're pouring into that second brain.
Well, even so, they say the stomach has a brain of its own in many regards.
Absolutely. I mean, the neurotransmitters, and we all will talk about our serotonin and our dopamine, all that comes from the gut.
It certainly does. And you're talking to somebody who didn't get enough sleep with those crazy hours, and I gave myself an ulcer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't wish that on you, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest things that really does impact the way our brain works is stress. And the one thing about stress, and I've looked at different sets of numbers, and every set of number that I look at, stress is going up. And it's impacting our daily life more each year. And think about 2024. That's going to be an election year. Oh, can you imagine what politics will do to the brain?
No. No. It's, look at the last election.
Yeah.
And what that did to people.
I mean, what it did to families.
And families, sure.
There were families that were split and that still haven't gotten over that. And I don't know that they will. And I do think that part of that is the world that we live in. It is split. And it's technology, and we live in this instantaneous gratification world. And, it is a different world that we live in. But people are so worried about what stress does to their heart. I'm more worried about stress does to my brain.
Interesting. We don't even think of it that way.
No.
In terms of reducing that stress that we deal with, well, let's go back. In your feeling, how impactful, if you reduce stress, would it be on our brains?
I definitely know that when you calm the brain down, the brain works more efficiently, more effectively. The overall communication going on in the brain improves. Everything improves. And when I say calm the brain down, if you can manage that stress in a more, manage it. Don't let it manage you. Yeah. We're all going to have stress. I mean, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how perfect your life is. You live in a world, and outside factors, external factors, are going to kick stress in your life. It's how you react to that stress, Steve, that will help you manage it.
So you've studied human behavior for decades and, has been the founder and director of the Brain Performance Center for quite some time now. You're deeply plugged into the way we think in our brains. But over the years, what was the most surprising thing that you learned about our brains, be it our brain health, how the brain functions, anything that stands out for you where you said, wow, I never realized that?
Well, my first big aha moment is that usually when you're having cognitive dysfunction, a problem with concentrating or focusing, staying on task, finish what you start, a lot of times there's emotional dysfunction. Because if you're having to work 4 times as hard as the person next to you, that's frustrating. That can create some level of depression. It can create some level of anxiety. And when I first started doing this, I found that there's always, if people come because they can't focus, then we'll always find some emotional upset. And if they come because of emotional upset, we'll always find how it impacts them cognitively. So that was my first big aha moment, they're all tied together. And I think the more that we've looked at lifestyle choices, you mentioned it one time when we were talking, what do you think social media does to the brain? Not a good thing.
Yeah.
It puts us in that comparison mode. You're going to have a winner and a loser, and there's always going to be the time when you're the loser. It's going to happen. And when we think about, people use social media in such crazy ways. People will use what they see on TikTok to make a diagnosis about their mental health. That's scary to me.
You are so on point with that. Leigh, I was just sending a text before. I don't need to go into the backstory of it, but it's exactly what you just said. And even more so for teens. They will hear one thing and think that they have a certain illness, affliction. They could hear from others, that have ADHD, example here, and think that because they have some of the symptoms, automatically, I have ADHD. That's it. put me on a med. You're right. It's very scary what we will believe based on social media.
It is, and the other thing with social media, it's that instantaneous gratification. And and I know life does really not roll that way 24/7.
Yeah.
But we become to expect it, and we set expectations that are unrealistic. And when we don't get our expectations met, what happens? We get angry. We get sad. We get irritable.
Yeah. It's and depressed if you don't look the way somebody else looks on social media, or you think that they're doing better than you and you're not, at their level. You don't know the backstory. Everybody's putting on a show for social media. It doesn't necessarily mean that is exactly what's going on in their lives, but we buy into it. We believe it.
We do. And part of it is I think we want to. I think that we want to believe that there's goodness out there and there's goodness for everybody. It's just that when we see everybody else sharing it and we're not partaking of it. And that's, to me, that's where the negative energy lies around social media. But it's not just social media. It's, my gosh, technology. I can't tell you how many people still think that multitasking is a good thing. Multitasking is not good for your brain, but so many people still take pride in that. I have 3 screens in my office, and I'm doing this on one screen, and I'm watching this on another screen, and then I'm actually working on this screen. And that they feel like that's a real sense of accomplishment.
What is the negative aspect of attempting to multitask on the brain?
Well, it's not good for the brain. I mean, if you and you think about any professional performer, whether it's an opera singer or an athlete, or it doesn't matter what it is, when they are 100% focused on one thing, their performance is at a higher level. And the same thing with multitasking. I do it. I was trying to pay some bills at the same time when I was doing 2 other things, and I realized I put the wrong check in the wrong envelope. And I'm so glad that I wasn't doing it online, because once that's done, that's much harder to take back. But it's multitasking takes away. And I'm a big believer in the Pomodoro technique. And that is you take small amounts of time and you focus really, really intently. And I'm doing my PhD because I only had small amounts of time during the day that I could use. So I'd take that 25 minutes and I would just focus as intensely as I could on one subject. And then I'd take a break. And I was amazed. And I still am amazed at what I can get done in that 25 minutes.
But did you really get it done the way you should have gotten it done?
Better than when I'm distracted and all over the place.
Yeah. That's where I'm going with that, because I find, and my mother always used to say this, you're spreading yourself thin. You're like butter on toast. And it's true. You can't really put that total focus into something when you're spreading it to 2, 3, 4 other tasks. You may think you're a super person, but you're really not. And more and more research suggests that. There was even something that came out a few years ago that said that women are better at multitasking than men. And I don't know why that was put out there, but it doesn't matter. It's not a good thing overall.
And I don't know why it was either. And I've heard that. But they may be better than men, but they still may not do it as well as they would if they were 100% focused on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that as we age, we become more accepting of things. Well, I used to could do a lot of things, and I can't now. But instead of you can, you just need to learn how to focus that brain and how to make it work the way you want it to do. And creating change is a great way. Learning new routines. I would love to learn a new language.
Me too.
I really would.
Wow. I always say that, and it's even Spanish. Nowadays I wish I had taken Spanish in school. It wasn't one of those things when I was in school that was really pushed, but it would benefit me today. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
And there's so many things that we could learn to do, but really if you just start looking at what you do every single day and you do it the same way every single day.
Yeah.
So if you're right-handed, brush your teeth with your left hand. And do it. Try it. It feels really funny. It really does, because I've done it. And if you love to cook, instead of, you're great, you create the most exquisite cuisine, but you don't know how to cook any Thai food. Learn how to cook Thai food.
Interesting. It's little things like that can make a big difference in your life and in your brain. I know that you help people with addictions, anxiety, ADD, ADHD, somebody's having trouble sleeping or, dealing with depression. It all starts there. You can do some things virtually, correct?
Absolutely. We can, and this is where with the aging brain, we can do some performance coaching virtually. And with the aging brain, it's about helping someone understand how to create change and getting the brain to accept the change. Because it's the F word, fear, fear holds us back. And once people will indulge in change, they'll see this is beneficial. This has really helped my overall cognitive fitness. I'm more engaged. I'm more alert.
Yep.
So people will see it, but sometimes we need that strategy. How am I going to accept the change? What am I going to do to bring it into my life, a little bit at a time, and build the brain's resilience? Because the brain loves to learn, and you have to remember, we're not asking the brain to do anything it doesn't want to do. The brain wants equilibrium. It wants homeostasis. It wants everything to work as well as it can. You just have to teach your brain to get used to change. And we can do that. There are definitely some things, some exercises that we can do, and things that people can do on their own. Visualization. I love visualization. And I'll always tell people, let's visualize a completely new experience.
I'm big on. I'm with you there. I'll before I even go to a party, I visualize what it's going to be like, so I can place myself there and be in certain situations in my mind. Well, how's that going to go? How's that going to go? Visualization is so powerful. Lots of great stuff we talked about today. Yeah, anti-aging. All right, keep using the creams that you buy and all those treatments on your face and for your skin. Fantastic, but if your brain's not sharp, it's not going to really mean too much. So the brainperformancecenter.com starts there with a free consultation, right, Leigh?
That's right, Steve. And I'd love to hear what people are struggling with that aging brain, because I have one. And this is my theory. This is my story, and I'm sticking to it. 65 is the new 45. So bring it on.
I'm not even going to tell you how old I am, but I agree with you.
Thank you so much.
And I will say that I feel in many ways my brain is sharper than it was even 20 years ago. But it's part of the journey, part of the process. So you gotta stick with it. And for that, you're there with a free consult at thebrainperformancecenter.com. Always great talking with you, Leigh, and I look forward next time we get a chance to get together.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Broadcasting.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.